We are live. We are live on the Conscious Awakening Network for Cosmic Conversations and the Galactic Alliance. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm your host, standing in for Sheila Seppi, Karen Swain from Blissful Beings and Accentuate the Positive Media. And I have a very special guest who I had on my show. Was it last week, Tanis, or the week before? I had on.
Yes, it was about a week ago.
Yeah, so she was on ATP discussing her new book, but we're going to talk about something different today. We're going to talk about facing fear. The beautiful Tanis Helliwell from Canada. Welcome, Tanis.
Oh, thanks, Karen. Thank you so much. And it is nice to meet everybody.
Yeah, we've got the little tribe here on Zoom. Oh, there's Lily. Hi, Lily. We've got quite a few people on Zoom, and we are streaming out to various platforms. We're on the Conscious Awakening Network.org, streaming live on the website, also on YouTube and Facebook and Roku, streaming on Roku and Amazon Fire, and on the Conscious Awakening app also. So we're streaming out to quite a few people. If you don't catch the stream and you want to catch it later, you can do so on all those networks. So let me tell people who don't know about Tanis a little bit about you. Tanis Helliwell has given transformation and healing workshops internationally for over 30 years. And in 2000, she founded the International Institute of Transformation, which offers programs to assist individuals in becoming conscious creators to work with spiritual laws that govern our world. She's the author of a lot of books, and I'm going to go through them in a minute. All your books, because I love your books. Tanis has heard and seen the elemental world, angels, and master teachers and other dimensions since she was a child. She is the author of an inspirational speaker presenting. Oh, I've said that already. Let me tell you about the books that she's had. Good Morning, Henry, which was what we discussed on one of the shows last year, which is an in-depth journey into healing and the body intelligence. High Beings of Hawaii, Encounters with the Mystical Ancestors. Hybrids, So You Think You're Human, which we've also discussed on Accentuate the Positive Media, which was great. And I want to delve into all these things because this is a new audience for you, Tanis. Summer with the Leprechauns, a true story with her friend, Lloyd, and Pilgrimage with the Leprechauns, a true story of a mystical tour of Ireland. Decoding Your Destiny, Keys to Humanity's Spiritual Transformation. Manifest Your Soul's Purpose. Embrace by Love poems. And the latest book that we discussed was The Leprechaun Story, as told by Lloyd, your friend Lloyd, to Tanis Helliwell, which is an autobiographical encounter with Lloyd. He contacted you and said, tell my story, right? Do you want to tell people a little bit about what's just happened with you and Lloyd?
Well, somebody put up a little figure of a leprechaun a moment ago. So I know some people are probably familiar with Lloyd already. But I did meet Lloyd, the leprechaun, in Ireland when I went to become enlightened. Never happened, but I did go there to become enlightened. And that was about 3 decades ago. And since then, Lloyd and I have co-written 3 books about the importance of nature spirits, and he's got great good humor. But the latest book, The Leprechaun Story, is his autobiography. So I'm not in it. I get the introduction, but after that, he takes over, and it's all about the elemental world, the world of nature spirits. And yeah, so that's The Leprechaun Story.
Sorry, I'm multitasking as you're talking. And today you wanted to talk about facing fear. Is that right, Tanis? Is that what you want to talk about?
I did. And it was really nice when you contacted me and you said that I could talk about anything. And I thought, oh, how nice, how freeing to be able to talk about anything. And yes, I want to talk about freedom from fear because I feel, think, believe, all of the above, that fear is the single most difficult thing that people face, and that it is what is undermining all the good intentions and all the good works and happiness and peace in our world. So that's it in a nutshell, actually.
In your email to me, let me add me. Where am I? Got to find me. Here we go. There we go. I'm back on. In your email to me, this is what you said: freedom from fear. I believe that fear is the root cause of all the erroneous thinking that leads us to devastating actions that have hijacked our beautiful world. You may believe that it's others who are causing fear in the world through violence, war, greed, and many other undescribable actions, and that there is either nothing you can do about it or that it isn't your problem. However, there is a great deal that we can do to establish our equilibrium during these challenging and confusing times. The best and quickest solution to tackle our own fears head on is by doing this. You move from hopelessness to empowerment and reestablish our energy to fulfill our soul's purpose in our inner and outer life. Also, in overcoming our own fears to help others do the same, which helps to establish safe, peaceful, and a loving world that we yearn for. You know, it's so interesting. I've been going through this with my daughter lately. She's in her 30s now, and she's suffered a lot of emotional trauma within herself, like exploring the density of emotion, like all that there is, depression and loneliness. It's like she's explored the gamut. And now she's reaching out to help others deal with it. And she's meeting people that are really, really stuck in their hopelessness. Like, I want to kill myself. And if you try and help them, they want to scream at you, or her, she tells me, about how I don't try and fix me, just listen to me. I want to kill myself, and I need you to be there for me. And like, how do you deal with people like that, Tanis?
Well, it's interesting you'd ask me that, because that's probably the hardest person for me to deal with. I was a psychotherapist and had a practice for many years. And when people would come and they would tell me their story and why they were there, and it was always because something was wrong in their life that they wanted to have fixed. So when they would come, I would listen and listen deeply to what their story was and their desire and their complaint. And then I would custom make an assignment for them. And then we would supposedly get together in a week and we would review how they had done. And if people came back and they said, yes, they had done it, then we could go forward. But quite often people would come back and they would say, oh, I didn't get to it because of this, or I didn't get to it because of that. And they had an excuse. So then I'd give them another chance. Okay, so here we go. Let me know how it goes this week. And they'd come back. Now, if they came back that second time, having not done the assignment, I would say, I'm not the therapist for you. And sometimes what would happen is that people would start crying, become emotional, and say, oh no, please, 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 please. And so then I'd give them one more chance. And I'd say, this is it. One more chance, and then if not, you need to go to someone else, because I'm not prepared to hold your hand for months and years, and so I think this is really important, that doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't serve anybody to support folks who don't want to get on with it. It doesn't move them forward. They're stuck. And it is a waste of time with the other person whose time they're taking up. So I have an expression, that you put two people together and you either get two people, you either got one person when you put two people together, you get less than two, or you get more than two, you get three. And I believe that if we are learning and growing and facing our fears, that we become able to enter a relationship where it's 1 + 1 = 3. And sure, all of us go through rough times. I get that. We can have bad illnesses. We can have our wives and our husbands walk out on us. We can get fired from the job that we loved. Yes, I understand that. And I think that we have to be compassionate when someone who we know and love is going through that, and give them time to get over it, but not to allow them in our time to wallow in our time. So that may sound, what do you call it, hard-assed, but I found that those are the people I attract anyway, are people who really want to get on with it, and who are interested in learning and growing. I do, yeah.
Stone Hobbit says here, totally, you can't help those who don't want to help themselves. Yeah, I think that's great advice. It's so interesting because it's kind of the advice I gave to my daughter, but she feels, because, when it's a friendship, like it's not a client, like first it was the boyfriend who was in the same position, and then she attracts a friend of the boyfriend who's doing exactly the same thing as the ex-boyfriend, is like in the depression, don't try and fix me, don't try and help me, I want to just complain about my life and I want to kill myself. And it's so interesting. And I said to her, you're just learning about how to deal with others. You've learned how to deal with yourself. Now you're learning how to deal with others. And it's so interesting what you say. Sometimes you just have to say, I'm not the one for you. Like, I'm not the friend, or I'm not the therapist. If you don't want to listen to me or take my advice, or, be on the same page as me, find somebody else. It's hard to do that to a friend though, don't you think? When
it's hard to do that with a friend, but I think that is a real friend.
Yes.
If I get stuck in something, I have friends that say to me, or I will ask them, how does this sound? And they'll tell me honestly.
Yeah.
I value that.
I do too. I really value when somebody calls me out and says, you're in your pity party, like you're in your limitation. And I go, oh my God, I am too. I am totally in because sometimes we just can't see it when we're in our own story, like we're so in the story that we can't see what we're doing with our vibration. And somebody, when they say, you're in your story of lack, it's like, oh my God, I'm in my story of lack. But that's sort of more for the enlightened people, like the people on Zoom. Everyone's nodding. Susie's nodding. Yeah, that's for you guys. Maybe not for your friends who are like, yes, I'm in my story of life. So how does fear dovetail with this conversation, Tanis?
Well, you put your finger on it a minute ago, and it has to do with scarcity. And I think that that's the underlying problem, this fear of scarcity. So we could have scarcity around there's not enough love. So I'm afraid if I leave my partner, who is a couch potato and not wanting to do anything at all with me, that I'll never find another person in my life. Right? That's, this fear of abandonment, or the scarcity of good jobs. And if I if I leave my job, well, you know, I'll be unemployed and I'll be a bag person on the street, you know, and that's what's going to happen to me. So ultimately, it is, you know, it's what are we afraid of? And if we come right down to it, it is a death. We're really afraid of death, is the ultimate fear that all of us face. And confronting these many difficulties that we go through, whether this is illness or it is stepping out of a job or saying no to someone where you've always said yes. Whatever these many steps we take are, it's facing things that we thought we were going to die in some way. And so if we confront these many challenges where we're afraid we're going to lose something, then ultimately we're preparing ourselves for the ultimate saying goodbye, auf Wiedersehen, to this particular life, this particular body. This is a package that we've got right now, and the challenges we face, Spirit has ordained. How wonderful is that? There cannot be a wrong move. So if we're presented with a challenge, first of all, I believe Spirit thinks that we're capable of meeting that challenge. I think we're set up for success. We're not set up for failure. We're not being asked to do something that we cannot do.
Yes, absolutely. So how do you sort of get over the fear of lack of change? I think it's almost the fear of change, really, isn't it? Because if someone's dying and they leave your world, whether you divorce them or they die, then there is a big shift in your life. There's a big change in your life. Like now my identity is now not the partner of somebody else. Like, so how do you get over that fear of change or lack?
I think that by doing what we fear the most, and we may not do it gracefully. You know, like every time we try something new, we will not be as good at it as something that we have been doing that's a habit, that's a routine, that we know. It's like experimenting with a recipe. If you make the same recipe day after day, week after week, you get pretty good at knowing, and you don't have to measure anything. But if you are trying a new recipe, you have to be very attentive. And your first attempt, you may not be a great success. And so we have a mini failure, but we have to give ourselves a little tap on the back and say, okay, it wasn't an A+ cake. However, the good news is it was still edible. And I made something I never made before. So I always think there's two goals, Karen. And one goal is we get what we want, which is the perfect partner, the perfect job, happiness forever, the perfect vacation, a body which goes on till it's 100 without even losing a tooth. And, you know, that's the perfect scenario. But, you know, if we sign up for life and the journey life takes us on and the challenges it presents, we always get another goal. And that is, we've done as good as we could. And like, you know, God, that's something to celebrate. I do a course on freedom from fear, and I have a whole module on celebrating yourself for the risks you've taken in life.
Yeah, we definitely need to celebrate ourselves more. I don't think we do that enough. You know, I received an email from someone this morning. Her partner is in the stages of transitioning. So he's been ill, and he's in his 70s. He's had 5 or 6 or 7 near-death experiences. And so he knows that, you know, he's a masterful teacher. He's a spiritual teacher. But there's still this clinging to life. Like, he knows that this is his time to transition. And he's not sad about it because he knows where he's going. But as his partner, she's holding on to the hope that he's going to get better and stay longer. And I'm thinking to myself, they're both master teachers, but we cling to this life, don't we? And as I chatted to my guides about it, they said her relationship with him will be so much more intimate after he transitions, because he'll be still teaching, but he'll be flowing through her and teaching through her. And there will be this combination of these energies of who he was as a human, who she is as a human, combined in the one body. So it's almost like there'll be a new personality, because it'll be the combination of the two of them. It was actually so beautiful what they were showing me. And yet she's clinging to this hope or this fear of his death, even though he's had like 7 near-death experiences. Do you want to speak to how we can overcome this fear of death?
Yeah, it's ultimately a combination of the fear of the unknown and the fear of losing control. And from what I have read of great masters, enlightened masters, who are already in unity with the divine, that when it comes for them to leave their physical body and throw it off, they have to purposefully use their will to throw off the physical body. So I think that the ego is very attached to our physical body, and it uses, Eckhart Tolle talks about the pain body. It uses pain to control us, and it uses fear to control us. And the more that we're controlled by fear, the more that we feed the ego. Now, we've got the soul, we have the ego, which is the personality. And I feel that the more we face our fears as we go through life and then ultimately at death, the more we face our fears, the more we embrace our soul, and the stronger the soul comes into this body which we have. So we become a soul-infused personality. So that when we get to the time when it is time to leave, that I'm not saying we won't have fear, because there is the unknown. We're still in this physical dimension, but that we ultimately have to get to this stage of surrender. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, as you may know, worked a great deal with death and dying and people who were dying. I remember seeing her live, actually, when I was quite young. I was still at university. And she's the one who came up with the 5 stages that a person goes through when they are dying. And I find it interesting because those same 5 stages are the ones we have to confront when we have a fear.
Yeah.
The same stages.
Yeah. Do you want to go through them? the 5 stages?
Sure, sure. Well, first of all, when faced with an unpleasant experience, we want to deny it, right? So, no, this isn't happening to me. There must be a mistake, right? My husband doesn't really want to leave, or no, they don't really want to fire me, or no, I'm not going to die. So that's the first stage, is denial. Then anger. It's not fair. After all I've done for him, after all I've done in my workplace, after all I've done for the world, how I've been in service, how I'm a spiritual person, how could this be happening to me? It's not fair. And then we move to the next one, bargaining. Well, what if I cut out meat? What if I give up smoking? What if I go on a diet? What if and then we are trying to bargain ourselves out of it. What if I take this chemo treatment? Is this going to work? Then the next stage, when you find out, you're now gone through 3 stages, none of them have worked, you're going to hit depression. When your husband or wife, they've walked out the door, your loved one is definitely dying, or you are definitely dying, you hit depression. And because there's this absence, there's this void of what's missing, but you don't know what will replace it. That's really what depression is. It's being in a void where you have this absence. I remember, I'll get to the 5th stage in a minute, but I remember a Buddhist teacher, after I wrote my first book, Summer with the Leprechauns, and I'd hoped to become enlightened, and then it didn't happen. And I came back, and I was speaking with a Buddhist teacher, a friend of mine, Zasep Tulku Rinpoche, a Tibetan Buddhist monk who is a friend. And I said to him, Zasep, I haven't got any more goals in life. And I was like 30 something, right? I have no more goals in life. And he looked at me and he said, he looked worried, like I was going to leave. And I started to laugh and I said, no, I'm not going to leave. But there's this void. I have nothing really I want to do, to be, to have. And he said, what you need to do, and this works for fear, and this works for getting out of the void. He said, you take one little step in anything that you like. And that's when I started leading tours to sacred sites around the world, because I like going to places around the world and sacred sites by myself. And I like making others happy and doing things for others. So that's where that happened. And then the last stage, when you're faced with this, is acceptance and surrender.
Yeah. Yes. The last stage is probably the hardest for many, don't you think? Acceptance. Acceptance is when you look at the vibrational chart, the vibrational ladder, acceptance is the bridge between everything stressful and everything blissful. As soon as you find acceptance, you can shift out of all your stressful thinking into a more joyous, more blissful, more happier, more connected state of being, more connected to your source, to your soul, to your guides, to the cosmos, to God, whatever you want to call it. But you know what? You are somebody who plays in different dimensions, specifically the elemental world. And we were talking about this on my show, Accentuate the Positive, the other day, about how the elemental people deal with death. And I loved what you said. I'd love you to explain to people about the elemental world and how they deal with death and dying and fear. How do they deal with these emotions that we're dealing with in this world?
Well, elementals or nature spirits, whatever you want to call them, they're made up of elves and gnomes and pixies and goblins and trolls. And there are elementals all over the world. And they live in a little higher frequency, a little higher dimension than our third dimensional world. And yes, I do see it. I've always seen other dimensions. And so yes, I do see it and communicate with them. And this is where all of us are going. We are all going into this higher frequency. And so elementals are totally in alignment with natural laws, which are identical to spiritual laws. And because they are so in alignment with natural spiritual laws, they do not fear death. And when they become tired of living, they let themselves fade.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yes, and some people commit suicide because they don't want to be here anymore. And other people commit passive suicide. And passive suicide is you're still here, you're still feeding yourself or eating, but you're not getting on with your soul's purpose. You're not contributing whatever you were supposed to contribute, because everyone has a unique gift. And we can't be anybody else's gift. We only can be the gift that we've been given. And elementals know what their gift is. They don't try to be, somebody that they're not. And a lot of us are always comparing ourselves to others and being hard on ourselves. And this is very sad, because if we only relaxed into who we are, we just naturally, our frequency goes up and then serve whatever that purpose is here on the earth. Make that contribution, and then people's self-esteem goes up, and then all of a sudden they are not depressed anymore.
Yeah. How do the elementals deal with fear? Do they have fears like we do?
Well, in a way they do, depending on what kind of an elemental you are. If you were a troll, you wouldn't want to be thought a weakling. Or if you were a leprechaun, you wouldn't want to be bad at keeping money or being a craftsperson. Or if you're a pixie, you wouldn't want to be a bad dancer. So there are, sure, they have various gifts, and their fear would be that they wouldn't be as good at their particular gift as others.
I'd love you to get into the hybrids. We had this discussion on the show a couple of years ago about the hybrids, because, as you said, the elemental world is in a different dimension, a slightly higher frequency than the third dimensional world. But as we're shifting, we're moving closer to their dimension. And so their world is becoming known to us again. And because of the evolution of their world and the evolution of our world, there have been souls who have been elementals that have incarnated into the human world to help in the shift, and they're called the elemental hybrids. Do you want to speak about those?
Yes. Yes. I used to, when I was a therapist in practice, I'm no longer a therapist in practice, but I never had a calling card saying I specialize in hybrids. But somehow they found me anyway. I found that there are elemental hybrids on the earth. When an elemental comes into human evolution, they can't come in as fully elemental. They have to use our gene structure, and they would need the permission of the great beings that oversee their evolution, working with the great beings that oversee the human evolution. And only the strongest elementals would want to come into our world, because we have such strong egos, such strong minds, that they would not be able to hold their own. I gave examples in some of my books of elemental hybrids, like Vincent van Gogh was an elemental hybrid. He was an elf hybrid, and he was diagnosed as schizophrenic. But if you've ever seen his pictures live, which I have, I've gone to many galleries which were displaying his pictures, real pictures, not a reproduction. They move. And art in the elemental world is way ahead. All the arts, singing, dancing, music, painting, drawing, is way ahead of where we are in the human world. So when elemental hybrids come into the human world, they often come into the arts in some way, like an actress or an actor or a comedian. Robin Williams, leprechaun hybrid. I sent him my book asking if he would, he and Meg Ryan, I thought Meg Ryan would do a good job as me. And I wanted them to do the Summer with the Leprechauns. It would have been so wonderful. And I heard back from both of them, or their agents. But Meg Ryan was looking for more serious parts at that point, not the comedic ones. And Robin Williams was busy wanting to play doctor after doctor. So anyway, they passed on it, but they would have been perfect.
What a shame.
Yeah.
One day we'll get your books in motion picture for sure.
That's funny.
I saw an interview with Robin Williams in the Afterlife on the Channeling Eric YouTube channel, and Elisa asked him the question, could you share a past life? And he shared a past life as some hairy animal. I can't remember, maybe an ape or something, some sort of animal. And she said, oh, interesting. And then he laughed, and this is from the Afterlife, and he said, I almost look like that in life because he was really, really hairy.
Yeah.
But yeah, he didn't share, he only shared one past life, but yeah, because we can flow through, as consciousness, we can flow through so many states of being, can't we? We can flow through animals and worlds and earth and rock and elementals. We can play in all these different dimensions. There's no limit to what we can play in, right?
Yeah, that is such a wonderful comment. And if people move that from theory to actually deep knowing, they would have no fear of death.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. And you also shared with me the other day, was it Jim Carrey? He's a hybrid.
Yeah, goblin.
Hybrid. Do you want to go through the traits of the hybrids, like what the traits are? Maybe there are people online. I'm sure there are some of you who feel like you might be an elemental hybrid.
Well, not only, I mean, if people are interested in my book, Hybrid, So You Think You're Human, I talk about 22 various possibilities of hybrids, which would include angelic, dragon, beings from the center of the earth, all of the elementals, which we've already talked about, but the Pan hybrid, which is the god of the elementals, Horus, the bird, Horus was the Christ of ancient Egypt. Isis and Osiris's son, all with the bird head. He was the Christ being. So yeah, there's so many different kinds of hybrids, and it's interesting to reflect on that, because that I do work with the ancestors, as you know, Karen, and I talk about spiritual ancestors, and how we have spiritual ancestors, which are these hybrid ancestors, and that they also are infiltrating us. They are part of our makeup. So if we are a dragon hybrid, for example, there are certain qualities. Like I found that some of my friends who are dragon hybrids have difficulty giving up cigarettes. Really?
That's hilarious. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Fire. I love that.
Yeah.
And what are the other traits of some of the other hybrids?
Well, angelic hybrids are interesting. My partner is an angelic hybrid, and his last name is Goody, which literally in Dutch means good man. And dragon hybrids are something that people just trust about them. And it doesn't mean that they've had like a perfect life, and they've been married once and they've been monogamous and, they've had 2 children, and not like that, but that there's something about them which has a purity, a kind of purity, a kind of niceness about them. And angelic hybrids have that. And there can also be something, because hybrids have their gifts and they also have their weaknesses. And the other thing about an angelic hybrid is they can be too trusting, too gullible, too naive. They, are so willing to see the best in someone and be so giving and generous that they may not be realistic about what that person would really be doing or be like.
You've just described my brother, one of my brothers. When he was born, he was your quintessential cherub child, like the depiction of a cherub, like a little angel, this blonde, sparkling blue eyes, curly blonde hair, chubby little baby, like the quintessential. And I've always said all my life that he comes from the angelic realm, but he's so trusting. He's so trusting. He's such a beautiful soul, but he tries so hard to be the man. He's off on he's on a dirt trail thing at the moment with his motorbike going through Asia on the dirt bike, He's such an angelic being, he's got that soft, beautiful nature. Yeah, so interesting. He doesn't know he's an angel. He doesn't know at all. He's not awake at all to it, but just such a trusting, loving being, such a beautiful man.
Yeah, that's funny, because my partner, who's an angelic one, yesterday, I locked my keys in the car and I had to call for help. And he came on his dirt bike rather than coming in his car to get me, but didn't bring like a helmet or anything that I'm going to be able to ride with him up to where my car is, and so someone else, he had to give me the key and someone else had to take me. And I said, wait till I come back just to see that you can get home okay, that you're going to be okay on this. Well, I come back And what do you think? The motorbike won't start, and it's fallen over.
Hilarious.
So often these kinds of, impractical things can happen with an angel hybrid.
Yeah. Well, we're all got to be human. What about, this is the Galactic Alliance. What about galactic hybrids? People that have come from other worlds, like have lived more lives in galactic bodies, even insectoids or grays or tall whites.
Yes. I don't, I've seen I've seen a UFO. I have had a UFO experience with my mother, who has saw them many times and told me one time, about it. And then it came, and sure enough, it was definitely a UFO. But I've had no experience and no real interest in the grays or the whites or the any of those, I must say. So here I am on this program called the Galactic Alliance, saying I have really no interest in those. And the reason I think I don't is because most people, when they talk about them or whatever, it's, about them being abducted and taken into their machines, and all these things happen to them, and all of this kind of thing. And I think that this is a lower astral reality. And that, yes, we do. I mean, I definitely believe in UFOs, and that we have visitors coming in UFOs, and that they can, travel interdimensionally. But I believe that the ones who are actually having to come in technical craft are not that evolved, not really that evolved, not like the great beings who evolved on Sirius or the Pleiades or Copernicus or Draconis, the great ones who evolved there and who have decided to enter evolution in humanity as a dragon hybrid or a pan hybrid or an L, whatever, to help with the evolution of humans, so that they are more like the bodhisattvas who want to go and help and be in service. So I'm not a skeptic about UFOs. I've even been in crop circles. I went into a crop circle around Salisbury in the UK, because a very good friend of mine is into crop circles, and actually she is associated with a magazine there in the UK that does the photographs and gets them like as soon as they're done. So I was invited to go after the next day that the crop circle appeared. And I have to say, it was a very different experience. First of all, it was a ripe field of grain, and it wasn't just bent once. It was bent like several times, and making geographical shapes. And you could feel the magnetism. It's like something had been definitely disrupted. And I felt quite nauseous in this crop circle and very dizzy, because the magnetism of the earth had been disrupted in order to create this. So it's not like I dispute. I knew that this could not have been done by any human technology. But it's not my field. And I think, Karen, each of us has to go with, what do we feel called to do in the world, and not get sidetracked.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like our Star Nation brothers and sisters are much more evolved consciously than many humans, not all humans. And, they absolutely work with the elemental world because they have access to the elemental world. Like you, they can see the elemental world and commune with it. And the beings that are doing the crop circles are doing it with Gaia herself, with the being that is Gaia, with the consciousness that is Gaia, and the elementals that are involved in maintaining and creating the flora in the area that the crop circles. So there is this collaboration of the elemental world and the consciousness of our Star Nation family that are bringing a message to humanity about our evolutionary process, whether that message is sacred geometry, talking about free energy, new energy things. Just there's so many messages in the crop circle, but it's definitely a dovetail of these two worlds, the Star Nation world and the elemental world, working together to create crop circles. James has a lot to say. James, would you like to come on and have a chat with Sheila? Where are you? Are you still online? He says gumdrops are his hybrid weakness, which I thought was funny. And he was quoting Terence McKenna. Where are you, James?
I'm just I had to turn my volume up to fully hear you. I apologize.
That's all right. Do you want to come on camera, or are you happy to stay hidden? I can't find you. Where are you? There's so many people online. Oh, there you are. Do you want to come on camera?
Yeah, can you see me?
Yeah. There you go.
Okay. I found it interesting, the nuts and bolts craft compared to non-nuts and bolts craft. I did really agree with that fully, that I feel that the ones who can interact with you other ways. I remember the very first time I don't want to use the word taken, but I am assisted off planet a lot lately, 3 to 4 days a week. For the last, since about the end of December. And it's always a bilocation type thing. And sort of as a comparison, a friend, this is occurring to her as well. And she uses certain medical devices at night. And there are giant gaps in the data, which sort of to me is an agreement that things are changing, that somehow you're not in bed anymore. And I think that's quite fascinating. And also something else that you had said about how do the elementals, both of you, the host and the guest, you talked about elementals and how they view death. I've had a near-death experience. I interact with elementals daily. I never thought to ask them about death. So that was just a fascinating thing. I'm not terribly sure it's germane to my place in the world spiritually. But it was, just, and I really like the concept of, I do believe that if they wanted to leave, they just fade, as opposed to something else. And I don't know what something else would be in their case. But I'm trying to think of what else that really struck me. As far as seeing craft, they're generally not what I feel would be considered nuts and bolts craft. It's more an energetic thing. And I think that's quite fascinating. If you guys are familiar with the Clubhouse app, I remember one night we were kind of in a fun room and it was a bunch of people and we all knew each other. And I live along the coast down near Florida, to keep it simple, in the United States. And the storms come through and they're really spectacular. And Tanis, when the lightning is special, meaning they're here, the lightning is the color of your shirt. It's that fascinating purple. And a very gifted friend, the most gifted friend I have, she says, they use it as portals to come through. And I kind of like that. And they don't come through like you can wrap on the side of the ship. It's an energetic coming through. So I bring up the Clubhouse app simply because there was probably 28 of us, and I kind of interrupted the room. It was a casual room, and I said, "Hey guys, they're here," and everybody tapped in. And probably for 2.5 hours, we all interacted with them. And because spirituality is like a potluck, some people could, all the clairs came in, and my specialty is channeling. So I could feel and occasionally see, and others could really see, and others could do like all the clairs at once. And others just, it was very, very fascinating to have this beautiful feeling. And I want to interrupt myself. So Babaji did something beautiful. He wrote, "You're not being abducted, you're having an induction, not an abduction." And I really like that because I look forward to these trips. I'm sorry for jumping around, but it's a very beautiful thing, and it works for me. We're all different. We all have different places and how we interact. Because just the way I think about things are two ways. One, I'm a guy who used to jump out of planes with Navy SEALs. So what scares me, I walk toward. And that works for me, but we're all different. Number two, my near-death experience was helpful in making me not afraid, but it was also a brain injury. And the brain injury still exists. And so you think differently. You tend to be very introspective. And it also, as you've noticed by the way I speak, you tend to jump around a bit, which I apologize for, but I do my best. And if I appreciate you bringing me up. If you had questions, I don't want to be the star, but sometimes it's nice to bounce back on what's been said. But I'll mute up and just sit quietly. I'm enjoying the conversation greatly.
Thank you, James. Thank you. So you didn't have a question, just you want to just share that.
Just a lot of resonance. I tried to get to a Barbara Lamb tour of crop circles, and unfortunately that's when she had her stroke, and so that fell through. Had some good talks with her on the phone. What a lovely lady. Every time she's on here, I really enjoy it. I think it's because most of what the guest has said has been so resonant. That's why I'm nodding and typing things. And I really concur with the Terence McKenna concept of jump into the void, because it really is a feather bed. I like to surf, and the biggest waves seem the scariest, but when you fall off them, it's bubbles. It's just a giant sea of bubbles. But I also don't surf 100-foot waves. I surf normal waves. But it's very fun to just don't be afraid, jump in, see what happens. And I guarantee you will be rewarded with something beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you. Has anyone else got any questions for Tanis? Babaji, did you want to come on and say hello? You need to unmute yourself if you want to chat. Where are you?
Okay, I got it unmuted, I think. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. You want to come on to camera while we're streaming?
I just did. I think I see myself. I see you, and I see Susie, and I see Tanis, is it? Hi, Tanis.
Hi, Babaji.
Oh, wow. It's such an honor. Well, it's not an honor. I think it's a pleasure. Maybe honor is okay, but it's so much fun to be with people that see the world in a different way.
Babaji definitely looks like a hybrid to me. What would you say, Tanis?
Yes.
I asked Tanis if there was such a thing as a wizard spirit, because that I am.
Yeah.
I am.
Yes. You look like a wizard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Magic surrounds you.
Yeah, I have a staff that I've kept for about 30 years. I always have a wand. I love wands. As you can see, I have a hooded, I wear hooded clothing, and I dream, but I dream awake. I dream I dreamed that we're going to have peace on earth. I dreamed that now's the time that we're going to learn to love. I think that's the real big deal, is to learn to love. And I think that's through acceptance, and we have to accept ourselves. And the way I work it out is that I just say it's a movie, and that we don't really have any choice. We just have a script and a place to be in it with others and just enjoy. How's that?
Yes.
James. Sorry, James just says Merlin.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that Merlin spirit. And I have a grandson named Arthur. So yeah,
There you go.
I'm trying to get him to realize, that Camelot's not that far away.
Well, I often say we're either in fear or we're in love.
Well, I think fear is really, it's in our best interest, I think. A lot of people don't have enough fear in their life, so they go to those movies and they scare the poop out of themselves. But that's because their life is too easy. I get enough fear. I don't need to go to scary movies, but it's part of our evolution. If we didn't have fear, we'd probably get in trouble. So fear is good. Enjoy it. Embrace it.
Oh, I don't know if I totally agree with that. I'd like to quote something from someone you might know, Babaji. Can I do this? It's from Paramahansa Yogananda, who is in the lineage of Babaji.
Yeah, I'm in that lineage myself. I was enlightened by a disciple of Paramahansa. His name was Oliver Black.
Well, this is really interesting because I am also a follower of Paramahansa Yogananda. And this is what he said. He said, the phenomena of fear is a mental poison. Fear produces a malignant magnetism which draws to itself the objects of fear, as a magnet draws pieces of iron. Fear increases all our miseries. It intensifies and magnifies our physical pain and mental agonies 100-fold. Fear is destructive to the heart, nervous system, and brain. It is destructive to the initiative, courage, judgment, common sense, and willpower. Fear contaminates the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind in turn can completely destroy the willing efforts of the conscious mind. Fear throws a veil over intuition and shrouds the almighty power of your confidence and the soul's all-conquering power.
Okay, that's a tough one. He's right always. I can't say he's not right, but it's up to our interpretation. Fear is useful. For instance, you could be in a situation where rational mind may be interfering. So when you're afraid, you lose access to rational thinking, and you do some pretty incredible things. You might jump higher or run faster. So I think that he's right. It does affect our judgment. And the problem with that is our society takes advantage of that. They keep us in fear so that we don't think rationally, and then they exploit us. So it's a two-way street. Fear is necessary, but it's a natural tool and it's useful for our evolution. But to stay in fear, that's not wise. It would be really bad for your health. I think the way to get over that one is to have faith. And geez, it's nice to know that you're in my family. I believe that spirit of Babaji is here. He's immortal and he's eternal. And my name is Sanatan Babaji, which means eternal Father. And I'm embracing the Heavenly Father as I speak.
This is great.
Here I am.
This is great.
Yeah, I was going to say to you earlier that if you were on that path of enlightenment, and you still are, and I think that it's an easy one. If you need any help with it, I'd love to be there for you. I'm 80 years old now, and I'm at least 50 years into this trip. And I'm still learning. As a matter of fact, my Kundalini experiences are daily. You know, they're not just one time. They're like every day I have a little more, a little more, a little more. And it's about stretching, you know, and breathing. I guess they call it Kriya. So if you'd like to learn Kriya Yoga from Babaji, I am available. And hopefully one day we'll get a Zoom show and just, you know, let all the Kriya people get together and wake up, because that's what happens when you get in their presence. You know, you get, yeah, somehow you can see through the veil, because there's no need for us to hide from each other because we're all authentic. Isn't that true?
Absolutely. We are all authentic. And the more that we live without fear, like, or live through the fear so that we become fearless, the more authentic we become, because there's like nothing to prove anymore. You know, it's just who you are. Lovely to meet you, and lovely to meet James, and lovely to be on. And Susie, I just want to say one thing to Susie before I'm going to have to leave very shortly, Karen.
But you got to let me talk back to you first. But you go first.
But, yes, okay, I will. But I have to just say something to you first. Okay. And that is, I went to a John Denver concert, not with John Denver, but with people who were doing all his music authentically. It was like a 12-piece band that was there using the authentic music. And I just did this 2 nights ago. So coming on and hearing you sing a song was, oh my heavens, this is interesting.
Well, I love John Denver. I got to see him in person, and somebody just gave me some free tickets. And after that, he had this woman harmonizing with him. She was Spanish and real big and stuff. Oh my God, it was like angels. I'm sold, you know. Too bad he's not around. But anyway, yeah, this was such a great talk. And I've had glimpses into the fairy world and the stuff. My teacher had a teacher that died like 38 years ago, and he was pretty strict and stuff. He kind of, but went to Hawaii, and the Menahunis met him, and they protected him when the humans didn't know how to do it, and it was just, and you could tune into them, you know, you could feel them, you know. And I just went up to Mount Shasta for a vision quest, almost died every day. It was so hard. It was like, I said, oh God, you know. And something came out. There's a real great gold pot at the end of this rainbow. But during that thing, it's just like you just have to. You talked about, you know, surrendering and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and stuff. And the very last thing is that void. And then you talked about just right after that, you talked about acceptance. And if you can get in that void and just accept it, pretty soon you see how potential it is. It's like the void between the Big Bang and Deepak and everything. There's all this brilliant potential. We just thought it was dark energy, but I think we've got presence coming. And Babaji, I just finished the 5-day Portal to Ascension, and there's a guy looks just like you and talked, and he says get in touch with any part of you that could be and elemental and dress that way. And my vision quest, until I started putting food out for the fairies to help me, nothing was going right. And then some really good things are going right now. But anyway, at the 5-day thing, it was very similar to, like, remember the Star Wars and going in that bar where there was so many different kinds of things, but there were fairy, you know, people with elementals, and then there were ET people. There were it was quite amazing, quite amazing. But thank you for this. This was just it was so it's your aura's real light, and it just lightened things up. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much for coming and talking with us. And I promise to continue singing John Denver songs forever. I was learning Calypso last night. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Tanis, can you identify elemental hybrids when you look at somebody? Like if you look at Susie, can you identify? Because she's so creative. She's one of those really creative ones.
Yeah, you know, my work, has been to help people rather than acting as a medium, because yes, I can definitely do that. But rather than doing that, I prefer to teach people how to do it themselves.
Yeah.
I believe that that is my work in the world. Everybody has to, once again, go with what they're called to do.
Yeah. 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 This is just
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you. And thank you, Karen. This is just magic tonight. Thanks.
Yeah, it was
Thanks,
lovely
Susan.
meeting you, and lovely meeting all of you. And thank you for having me on, Karen.
So are you going to go now? All right, well, we'll just have a
Yes.
bit of a chat with the group.
Oh, I
That's
thought
okay.
it was only an hour.
An hour. Okay, that's
I-
no problem. Yeah, it's a 2-hour show.
Oh, I
'cause we-
didn't know. I
We
didn't.
do a presentation for an hour and then questions for, however
Oh,
long
dear.
questions have, but
You'll
that's
just have to come
okay.
back. You'll have to come
Have to
back.
come back. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
As I
I'm
say, Sheila
sorry.
puts these on twice a week and has a guest teacher twice a week, Cosmic Conversations. So there's plenty of room for lots of people to come back and chat to the group.
Well,
And-
I hope that everyone has a great chat.
Well, just tell people where they can find you. So people that want to follow up on your books.
Sure. Yeah, sure. If you want to look at my books, one of them is on the ancestors in Hawaii, Susie, and that one is called High Beings of Hawaii, Encounters with Mystical Ancestors. So I talk about the Menehune, just like you were talking. But if you're interested, you can go on my one of my websites is just TanisHelliwell.com. That's my personal one, but the one where most of my self-study courses, and if you want to join our newsletter or anything, it's called myspiritualtransformation.com, because that's really what we're about, helping people with their spiritual transformation. So thank you once again, all of you. And Diane has got a beautiful background there. And Wendy's a beautiful person with her picture. And there's Dawn. We didn't see Dawn alive, but and there's a Mark. That's my brother's name. So it's really been nice to be on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanis. Thank you so much. Big love to you.
Big love to you. Thanks, Karen, for asking me.
So has anyone else got anything you'd like to share about your experience with the elemental world? What about you, Don? I know that you've got lots of people have got experiences with our Star Nation brothers and sisters, but what about with the elemental world, with fairies or elementals? One of Tanis's books, which I think is really important, is Good Morning, Henry, where she talks about the body intelligence, which she calls the body elemental, and how you can speak to the body intelligence because there is the elemental of the body, which is the body intelligence. And, your consciousness can like roll with the body intelligence and heal itself. Have you got anything you want to come on, Don?
I don't think I've seen anything, just it's more sensing and just loving nature and trees and seeing the leaves blow through the wind, and then it's like feeling something there. But I haven't physically seen any elementals, but it's more of being part of something more than me, and especially in nature. I just love everything about nature and talking to the trees and the wind and the dirt, and I just love all that. So I feel part of it, but I've never actually physically seen an elemental.
Yeah, it's interesting when you become aware of them, you can see them, because I know that you've got an amazing, insight, and your frequency will allow you to see them. I guess that it's that awareness of them. My next door neighbor, she's a good Catholic girl. She listens to me, but she's pretty skeptical about everything I talk about because she's like schooled in doctrine, like she's got PhD after PhD in Catholic doctrine, which is so fascinating. Anyway, she's an avid gardener. And one day she walked into the house, and behind her was this golden, it was the size of the end of your thumb. It was a golden orb, I suppose, and it had a tail, and it sort of flew as she walked in, and behind her, this golden orb flew in after her, and came with zipped, and it almost had a zippy sound, zipped around and like disappeared behind the wall. And she was looking at me, looked behind her going, and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "An amazing golden fairy followed you in the room." And she said, "I've just been in the garden." And so she's working with the elemental world, but she can't see them. But when she came over, you know, after just potting and working with the garden, she brought in this beautiful golden fairy. Yeah. So look out for them. I know that many of you have insight. They're everywhere. If I just go into meditation and squint my eyes, I see the elemental world everywhere as these lights moving around in space. It's just amazing. It's like these little lights, tiny, weeny points of light.
Well, I did have something like that happen, but I just didn't associate it with elementals. I was out on the patio one day, and it was like raindrops falling, just not a lot, just here and there, and then they would flash and then just vanish and just flash. But it was like gold light falling, little drops, and then just flash and vanish. But I never thought of that as an elemental. I just thought it was a perfect moment.
Yeah, like there is so many energies surrounding us that is there in communion with us and to communicate with us. It's like, it's just, you know, there's spirit, there's elementals, there's consciousness all around us. It's amazing. And as we shift our consciousness, we become more present to it. But I've had many guests on my show. Penny Kelly's another one. She had a farm in upstate New York, and she said she wrote a book, The Elves of Lily Hill Farm. The elves came to her and started talking to her about her planting technique. She was planting grapes, I think, to sell for the wine industry. I can't remember. It was years ago, probably about 40 years ago. And they gave her all this advice about how to triple her crop. And yeah, it was fascinating. But she's a Palladian, multidimensional Palladian here on Earth, but with access to the elemental world. Has anybody else got any stories about their access to the elemental world? Anybody? You have to put up your, who's that?
There's my hand. I guess I got to put up the hand the right way, huh?
Oh,
is that
James.
Okay? It's Jim.
Oh, Jim. Jim.
What the guest said about elemental birds, I'd never thought about before. And I have a waitress friend near Asheville, North Carolina, and she visited my property, which is very full of fairies. And others have seen them with me, but they're there. You might see 2 dozen, but she visited, and it was getting to be dusk, and they like to come out after dark. And she said, "By the way, I believe that I'm a fairy hybrid." And this is just this chubby little waitress. Looks like a mom. She is a mom. And it came dark, and I said, "Okay, let's go outside and interact." And we stepped outside, and when we touched the ground, this large rock near us just lit up. And it large, I mean, it was the size of a big coffee table, lit up absolutely neon. And it was like Fantasia. And
Wow.
400 feet to the creek and back. And that took 4 hours because there were so many fairies. Because of her, that we were afraid we were going to step on them.
Wow.
And I can't tell you if you could step on them, but they loved her. It's like meeting someone that dogs like, and you go out for a walk, and all the dogs you meet just glom on that person.
Yeah.
And so it's absolutely wonderful. I have almost an endless number of stories, but I'd really like to hear other people speak as well, rather than taking up all the time.
Jim, have you been a guest on Cosmic Conversations? Has Sheila had you on as a guest? Oh, you sound fascinating. Babaji says that his plants talk to him. Yeah, of course. It's all conscious. I had years ago, I had Penny, what's her last name? She got married and changed her name. She was a nurse. She's been all over if people watch NDE podcast shows, she's had millions of views with her story, but I was one of the first people to talk about. And after her NDE, she said her poor husband, or I think he was her fiance at the time, had to cope with all her awareness, because one day they were going to Walmart or something, and she got out of the car and she said, Don, her husband's Don, that rock's talking to me. stop, that rock's talking to me, because she could just hear all this communication from the plant world, from the elemental world after her NDE. It was hilarious. We had such a fun time. But Babaji, what do your plants say to you?
Well, you can hear me, right? I was living in a community in Northern California. I don't know if I would call it northern, but just north of San Francisco, Clear Lake area. And it was a Hindu ashram. It was called Mount Kailash. And they had cooks, that cook Indian food, and they used a lot of spices. And I overdid it one day, and I felt like, oh my God, I'm going to burn up, I mean, the spices were giving me, I guess, what they call, I don't know, heartburn is what we call it, but it was to the max. And I thought, what am I going to do? This is terribly uncomfortable. And I walked past the greenhouse, and I heard, eat me. And I looked at the plants, and they said, eat me, eat me. And they said, Tulsi, Tulsi. Now, in the Hare Krishnas, and that happened to be a Hare Krishna communal farm, they have a plant called Tulsi, and they worship the plant. Every one of them assemble in the morning, and they give a drop or two of water to the plant, and they dance around it. They believe every time you go around the plant, you are forgiven one of your sins. So they race around the plant to get themselves purified. So it said Tulsi, Tulsi, and I remember the Tulsi plant is so sacred to these people that they actually fight over it. Whenever there's a little Tulsi leaf in the food, they try to take it from you because they want it. So I said, well, okay, Tulsi, Tulsi, let's do it. So, a beautiful cat you have there. Oh my, black, all black?
Every good witch has a black cat.
Yeah, I know, but I have a white cat. What does that say to you? Huh?
I'm joking.
I no, you're not joking. And I had a black cat named Licorice.
Licorice, that's cute.
And I had a black rabbit named Magic.
Oh, nice.
And a black dog, and a black horse, and a black chicken. I never gave the chicken a name. But the horse was named Sati. That's the wife of Lord Shiva. So getting back to this Tulsi, I ate the plant. I just took off a few leaves and I ate them. They were basil. Tulsi is actually holy basil. Basil is what they put in spaghetti, right? To keep you from getting indigestion.
Yeah.
So there you go. The plant knew that that's what I needed, and it spoke to me. But I'd say that the speaking is more like clairvoyant. No, audio. What do you call that when they speak without words? It just comes to you in a thought.
Telepathic.
Yeah, that's
Telepathy.
how they are. Exactly. So the plants speak with me telepathically, and I'm learning to speak now with the animals telepathically.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a good story. If you got a minute, maybe next time I'll do it if you don't want to do it now. But I actually spoke to a machine, and this machine was on a planet, and I believe was Jupiter. And man, we're telling stories here, right? I was in Washington, D.C. on the 200th birthday of our nation. I was in the house of a man who wrote speeches for Richard Nixon. They didn't want me to sleep in the house, but they told me I was welcome to sleep out on the veranda or whatever, it was sort of a patio thing on the second floor. And I was laying there on my back on my sleeping bag, and I was watching the heavenly body, some of us call it a star, but I believe it was Jupiter, right? The planet. And I was thinking, what if somebody on that planet were watching Earth thinking that they wish they were here, and I was on Earth thinking I wish I was there, and that because we had the same thought in that same moment, bingo, all of a sudden I was there. I was in their body. I was not in my own body. I was in their body, and I assumed they were in mine. So what did I do? I decided I will present myself to them, officially. Like I remember the cartoons, take me to your leader. So I was going to their leader, and they wanted to argue with me. They wanted to argue with me, and I really wasn't up for it. They were trying to say that it was kind of like the Planet of the Apes, where the guy comes back, from wherever, right? He comes back to planet Earth, and the monkeys have evolved, and now they think that they're more important than humans, right? So these machines thought they were more important than me, and they were making me they were trying to make me feel like I was a lesser entity than them. But I convinced them by asking about 3 questions. Like, one of my questions was, "You guys don't have any feelings, do you?" And they said, "No." I said, "Well, what happens when one of you gets, damaged?" They said, "Well, we just repair it." I said, "Then you don't have any fear of death? You have no fear of pain? You don't really understand anything, do you?" And after, I'd say within 3 to 5 minutes, I convinced them that I was greater than they, and they bowed down to me. They said, "Oh, you're our creator." Now, how about that for a story?
That's a story.
Isn't it? We humans were probably living on Jupiter at one time, and we had to evacuate, and we left those machines behind to maintain the planet. And I went to visit. Go ahead.
That's what everyone's scared about with the AI, because there's like AI exploding all over the planet right now with Chat GPT and the upgrades and the upgrades and the upgrades, and AI is kind of taking over, and everyone's talking about, is AI going to take over? And yeah, what do you guys think about all that, about the AI exploding, or anybody that's online?
It would be good. It would be good, because the people that have taken over now are destroying us. And that's the media. If you want to put fingers on somebody, whoever is responsible for that crap that they put on television that has destroyed the minds of our youth, that's the problem.
Yeah.
And if we had AI, I think it would be a little smarter than that.
You think?
Yeah,
Maybe.
I hope so. Well, I don't think AI would exploit us. We're being
well, you never
exploited.
know, really. They might become superior and think that humans are inferior and get rid of the humans. There's been so many Hollywood movies about that. But I don't think it's the media, it's the people controlling the media, because people go, people go into media. They're beautiful people who think they're going to make a difference in the world and tell stories. And then they go into these corporations, and they've got bosses that they have to, they put their kids in private schools and buy expensive houses, and now they're a slave to the mortgage and they can't lose their job. So they've got to do what they're told. It's a common story. What did you say? He's Susie. Hey, Karen, if you have a few minutes after this, I'd love to share a couple more cool stories about. Yes.
Well, the point is, whoever controls the media, that's it, right? And they control us, because they put all these things up there for us to feel that we belong to, and we try to compete with it and be whatever they are, and we've all gone mad. We've all gone nuts. And I quit watching that stuff like, oh man, 40 years ago, I think I just realized this is not good for my health, and I turned it off. I'm very selective with what I expose myself to, and the regular TV is insane. It's just totally nuts.
Regular TV is insane, but this world is insane, and I think at some point we have to stop not exposing ourselves to it and understand, like we had that discussion with Brandon. Understand that this is a creation. We are all part of the creation. There's the white cat.
What? I don't know if you can see him right now. There he is.
Yeah, he's beautiful. He's beautiful. Look at those beautiful eyes. Oh, look at him. He's absolutely beautiful.
His name is Fooey.
Fooey.
Yeah, because he had a mustache, like a Fu Manchu mustache. So I named him Fooey, and his brother I named Catmandu. So I've had cats all my life. Have had, believe me, over 400. You wouldn't think that's the truth, but I did live on a farm, a 5-acre farm, and we had 3 or 4 females pregnant, twice a year, and they would have anywhere between 6, 8, or 10,
and you kept
each.
All of them.
And it was wonderful. I just loved them all. They were all Siamese. So I'm going to
Babaji, you're going to say goodnight. I was just going to say to you, the last couple of times that I've seen you online, you've said to both the guest teachers that you wanted to teach them. And you say you're in your 80s now. Have you put yourself out there as a teacher in your lifetime and had groups and, done your teaching in your groups?
No, I've been ready for like a long time.
You've been ready.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have a guru of my own, right? that I lived with for like, well, I didn't live with him, but he was in my life for at least 10 years, 10 or 12 years. And I totally served him. And I think that's the program, is to find someone that you trust and you're willing to, give it up to. And so I had a guru. His name was Narayan Maharaj. And I loved him with all my heart. I love God so much that I wanted God to take a physical form so I could give him a hug. And that's how I met my guru. I could tell you stories about guru, but he's not my first. I think Paramahansa Yogananda was my first. And yeah, I think that's what I am. I think I am that kind of a person. Go ahead.
Maybe in the next life, because you keep saying to the teachers that you want to teach them. Let me teach you. Contact me and I'll teach you. Which I find is funny.
I'm here to teach. I can even teach the gurus. That guy would. Yeah,
we're all teachers. We're all teachers, and we're all students.
I'm going to finish this. There's this one guy who calls himself Sadguru, right?
Yeah.
And that's sad. I'm Sadguru, S-A-T, the truth. I am
Sadguru. Maybe he's Sadguru.
So I'd like to go one-on-one with that guy anytime, but
I'm sure you would.
When he's ready. So one of these days, yes, you will see me in a place where I can share my experiences. I don't know about teaching. I can just do what I do. And I'm being taught. Whatever inside of me that's me is performing. I'm just a witness.
Well, what I find fascinating about this group is so many of you have these incredible stories. Like Don was the first one that I encountered in this group, and he started opening up about his stories. And then I had Don on the show. I had you on the show, on my show, ATP Media, to share your story, because there's just so many of you that have just amazing lives and amazing stories. Jim, you sound the same. You've had amazing encounters. You get online with Tanis and say, oh yeah, I interact with the ETs all the time, and I speak to the elemental world all the time. This is not a common experience for most humans. So it's beautiful to be with you all. And Susie's the same. But I'm going to end it here today. I'm going to end the live stream. I'm going to end the recording, and we'll just have a little chat before we go online. So thank you, everybody that has been tuning in online on all the streaming platforms on the Conscious Awakening Network. And thank you to everyone that's been on Zoom. And thank you to Tanis Helliwell, the beautiful guest teacher. She's really quite amazing. She seems humble, but she's been doing this for years, and she's in Canada. She's like really, really well known in Canada. She's a master teacher. She's absolutely amazing. But it's interesting, I'd never had the galactic conversation with her, because we always talk about healing and the elemental world. And it was interesting to hear her perspective on our Star Nation brothers and sisters. So thank you again. Bye.
Thank you for doing such a wonderful job. You make us feel, well, you just give us a chance to be ourselves. And I want to thank you.
Thanks,
Namaste.
Babaji.
Yeah,
Namaste.
I got shot off the internet for a second, but that's what I was going to say too. Thank you, Karen. You are so much fun. You're just so beautiful, just so cool. Conscious lady. Love it.